Mother's Day and the topic of peace. I'm excited to get into some of the scriptures that and the study that relates peace to a covering. I thought about how mothers cover their children, just like Jesus talked about a hen taking her wings and covering Jerusalem, or the people, his chosen people. But that's what you all mothers, that's what you do. In some form or fashion, everybody does it differently, but you create an environment for your infant to get the nourishment that it needs, the safety, the security, the protection, the love, the encouragement, all the things, and then they're not infants anymore, and they're not toddlers anymore, and so on and so forth. But even the things that a man needs from his mother at 50 or 60 years old is something only a mother can give. Only a mother. And there's lots of mothers on this earth, but you're the only one that has your kids. God made it that way. So, with that said, we're going to review the scriptures that we're talking about. Galatians 5:22. But the fruit of the Spirit is love, joy, peace, patience, kindness, goodness, faithfulness, gentleness, self-control. Against such things there is no law. Today we're talking about peace, the third of those. 1 Corinthians 13, I'm not going to read the whole chapter, but one of the pieces of what Paul says love is, he says it rejoices with truth, which we talked about last week. It keeps every confidence. It believes all things, hopes all things, endures all things. And we're going to talk today about that portion where it says it keeps every confidence, and break it down just a little bit. My hope is to encourage you, just like Jeff said and Jennifer said, and I think somebody else said it today. If you're going through a time, or will be going through a time in the near future where things feel shaky or uncertain, Tina mentioned it. She said she about had a panic attack. If that thing is surrounding you, then there has to be something bigger than that gives you peace. And today, that's what we're going to talk about. And because that's the only way, that's the only solution when we have those times in life, and they happen to us. They will happen to us in the future. They've happened to us in the past, and everyone is subject to that challenge. So let's turn to Mark 4. Do you want to throw that PowerPoint up there, Sandra? Just to review quickly, it may be up there. The next slide. So I shrunk this down a little bit, but we're on love, joy, peace. We're on peace, and we're going to read Mark chapter 4, and we have a few other scriptures to go with it. But I'm associating that with the fruit of, or the characteristic of love that keeps all confidence. In other translations, that same phrase right there is puts up with anything in the Message. Beareth all things. That's what we said in the King James. We used to read King James when we were kids, and that was the normal version. And then the J.B. Phillips says, love knows no limit to its endurance. And so we'll talk about a little bit about how that is a covering characteristic of love that I think goes with peace. Now, again, I'll say it again. There's nothing in the Bible that made me put fruit of the Spirit together and the characteristics of love, but I believe it's a helpful tool for us as we think about what the fruit of the Spirit is. So in Mark chapter 4, verse 35, I think we're just going to show a few scriptures on the screen, but I'm going to read starting in 35. Late that day, he said to them, let's go across to the other side. This is Jesus, and Jesus says, let's go across to the other side. They took him in the boat as he was. Other boats came along. A huge storm came up. Waves poured into the boat, threatening to sink it. And Jesus was in the stern, head on a pillow, sleeping. They roused him, saying, Teacher, is it nothing to you that we're going down? And then in verse 39, I think, yes, we got it up here. And he got up and rebuked the wind and said to the sea, Hush, be still. And the wind died down, and it became perfectly calm. Verse 40, and he said to them, Why are you afraid? Do you still have no faith? Verse 41 says, They became very much afraid and said to one another, Who then is this that even the wind and the sea obey him? I'm going to go back to a different version real quick. The wind, this is the message. The wind ran out of breath. The sea became smooth as glass. Jesus reprimanded the disciples, "Why are you such cowards? Don't you have any faith at all?" Now I'm going to pause there. With that word, that's cowards, it comes from a Greek word, deilos, which is not the same word as the next word that was translated fear. But cowards is this idea, it's typically a fear that's has a negative connotation, where we forget what God said. We just stop, or temporarily stop, or have a pause or a latency in believing what God said he would do. And the Israelites, of course, we saw this in the Old Testament, they had that many times. They just, lots of things, circumstances, wars, kings, whatever, got in the way, and the Israelites would forget what God said. And they would lose a little hope of they were going to see the promise fulfilled. So when he says, "Why are you such cowards?" in the message, or what you saw up here is, "Why are you so afraid?" He's saying, what happened to your faith? Like, you should have the same faith that you did just yesterday, but now there's wind and waves, and so your faith just kind of went, boop, just gone. And then it says they were in absolute awe. Up here, they were very much afraid. That word for afraid is a different word that has what we would consider phobia, phobos. But it's more of a awestruck, terrified, alarmed, like heightened sense of what just happened. And that can be, of course, when we say the word terrible, 50 years ago when you said the word terrible, it meant one thing, and now if you say terrible, it kind of means something different, right? But when we say terror, we think, Tower of Terror and Halloween and, scary rides and spooky things and ghosts, whatever. But terror is also I can't, in my whole body, I can't understand what just happened or what just took place, and I don't have a place for my mind to understand this. And what they were saying was about Jesus. He just spoke to the wind and the waves, and they stopped. So this is not, even though the word fear is used right back to back, this is a different kind of fear. This is more of a respectful, reverential, oh my gosh. And so Jesus connected with his disciples in this way, and I think what is important about this story, I think of peace. I think of peace that, like a river that attendeth my way, from the hymn. But what this peace is it's God giving us a promise, and Jesus, of course, with his disciples, he's already, just in Mark chapter 4, we're still early on in his ministry, but already he's built a confidence, his disciples have built confidence in him that he knows what he's talking about and he has authority. He's already developed that with them. And he said, "Let's go to the other side." So what changed? If Jesus said, "Let's go to the other side," he's obviously already proven to us that he's going to do what he said, and he's very capable of doing what he said, but all of a sudden we're getting scared. We're getting worried. And so when Jesus did that, I don't think that he performed a miracle just to try to impress them. I think he was saying, you need to just trust. Like, even when it doesn't make sense, when the circumstances are against you, you need to trust that God's got this. It's okay, right? And of course now, years later, okay, we're past, after the cross, after the resurrection, we understand that God has put that inside of us. I have not ever spoken to the wind and waves and told it to stop. Judy's told us many stories over the years of saying, "Hey, no rain today," or stop. Power comes back on, or you have power when nobody else has power. We have lots of those stories. So we know that we have the ability to affect our environment, right? And not just be relying on the same flesh that everybody else relies on. So Jesus said, "Go to the other side." Now, there is a hymn, I just quoted it. "It is well with my soul." I'm sure all of you know that, because there's also a Bethel music song that kind of takes that "It is well" song. And it sounds like this if you don't recall it right off the top of your head. "When peace like a river attendeth my way, when sorrows like sea billows roll, whatever my lot, thou hast taught me to say, it is well with my soul. It is well." All right, so it keeps on. "It is well with my soul." This man, Horatio Spafford, lived in the Chicago area, had a wife and 4 children, and he was a business developer. He owned businesses, and he suffered a lot of loss during the Chicago fires, the big Chicago fires, late 1800s. And shortly after that, as they were compiling, he loved the Lord. He was a Christian man, loved the Lord. Shortly after that, they were going to take a vacation into Europe, and something came up with his business development, and he had to send his wife and 4 children on in a boat from Chicago area to Europe. And there was a bad storm. All 4 children died. The mother ended up living. But when he was going to catch up with her, because he didn't. There wasn't internet, there wasn't GPS, there wasn't anything, there wasn't phones, there was nothing. He had to go and find where his wife was, and of course he has no idea what actually happened. But as they were passing where the shipwreck was, he learned of the shipwreck. The captain of the ship paused over that spot where that ship went down, and that's where he wrote this hymn. And so I think this man, that's a lot of suffering. Like we all have our own suffering, right? Yep. So he went through a lot of suffering, a lot of loss, and his heart was when peace like a river. This, of course, he wrote this hymn on that boat that night, in his cabin. Attendeth my way when sorrows like sea billows roll. Whatever my lot, thou hast taught me to say, it is well with my soul. One of the things I think that's unique about having a peace like Jesus had peace, like the disciples learned from him, is a peace is not a guarantee that everything's going to work out perfectly. A peace is not a guarantee that I'm going to have all the education I need, I'm going to get the perfect job, I'm going to have all the money I need, I'm going to have all the stuff, and I'm never going to get sick, and all my kids are going to be perfectly healthy, and I'm never going to have any loss, and nobody's going to die. Like that, the promise we have in God is that none of us will die, right? But it has nothing to do with this flesh. Like, we're all going to die. Our bodies are all going to pass. But just like when the first Christians in the first few centuries paid high prices to carry the gospel around, they were tortured. They were burned, they were shot, their hands were chopped off, their tongues were cut out. They went through some misery just because they believed Jesus was the Son of God, and that he really had come to give good news to all humanity. And there were people that didn't like that message. They thought it was disruptful. Did those people have promises of God to live 70 years, 80 years? They didn't. They didn't live that long. But these people that died as martyrs, and I've read in that Fox's Book of Martyrs, they would be burning in the middle of a pile of wood, and they would be singing songs of praise to the Lord. How do you do that? How in the world do you do that? You do that because you have a peace and a joy inside of you. Some of them would laugh and sing joyfully because there's something that you can't kill this body. You can't keep me down. Jesus won. He won forever, once and for all. And I don't have to live down. I don't have to live defeated. Now, I'm giving a very extreme example. Not all of us have to go be burned at the stake. But the point is, we have something in God through Christ Jesus that doesn't compare to any other kind of covering. So let's talk about covering for a second. Let me read the Bethel music version. And through it all, my eyes are on you. This is Kristen DeMarco usually sings this. And through it all, it is well. Through it all, my eyes are on you, and it is well. It is well. So let go my soul and trust in him. The waves and wind still know his name. Let go my soul and trust in him. The waves and wind still know his name. This is obviously a version redone. It's very beautiful today. Current modern worship that takes the concept of that song and just amplifies it. The waves and wind. So in our lives, the waves and wind still know his name. In the name of Jesus. All right. So let me go back to the other translations. I told you on the love side, in 1 Corinthians 13, the Message says that love puts up with anything. New American Standard says it keeps every confidence. The King James says it bears all things. The J.B. Phillips says love knows no limit to its endurance. Now, this is what's fun. I don't typically really care that much about Greek words. Like I don't know that it really benefits everybody to know what a Greek word is. Okay, yay, it's a Greek word. Came from somewhere. Wonderful. But this one was pretty neat to me. The word is stego, S-T-E-G-O. And it means to place under a roof or cover over, figuratively, of course. It's sometimes translated endure because it's shielded, so it lasts longer. It can keep going even though the things are against this, or there's adverse conditions. Sometimes it's referred to as bearing up or translated as bearing up because you're under the Lord's protection, covering. Now, what is the first thing that you think of when you hear the word stego? Stegosaurus. It's a stegosaurus. Did you say stegosaurus? Thank you very much. So, before scientists understood dinosaurs as well as they do today, the first person that discovered the plates on the back of a stegosaurus in the 1800s, the first scientist, they assumed when they saw these plates that those plates covered the dinosaur like an armadillo, like a plate of armor. Plate, like a roof, right? So that's where they took this Greek word and they named it Stegosaurus, right? Because all of our dinosaur names come from Latin and Greek. They named it Stegosaurus, and it was years later, century later, that they realized, because they found other animal bones that had been struck by these plates, they realized those plates were vertical. So if you don't watch enough Jurassic Park and you don't know what a Stegosaurus is, Stegosaurus is a big, long dinosaur that runs on all fours, and it has plates like it's like shoulder blades that stick out really far all over its body, the length of its body. And so that plate was not only a covering or protection, but it was also an offensive weapon when needed to defend. That has nothing to do with Jesus whatsoever. But the fact that this scientist thought of it as a plate that covered, I think that's neat. So when Paul is writing, he's saying, he uses that word that the Greek translation says stego. He's saying it keeps every confidence. My love for you, I'll say my son's here. My love for Isaac, it covers him with a lot of things, right? That covering allows Isaac to grow, mature, understand, rise up, and that covering is always there. I mean, Isaac is always going to be my son till the day I'm gone. I'm going to cover him with the love that I have for him. Now, my love changes because my understanding of that covering changes. All right, but it does cover him. In Proverbs 10, 11, and 12. The Bible says, the mouth of the righteous is a fountain of life, but the mouth of the wicked conceals violence. Hatred stirs up strife, but love covers all offenses. And I'm going to jump to 1 Peter 4 and talk about this for a second. The end of all things is near, therefore be of sound judgment. This is 1 Peter 4:7. And sober spirit for the purpose of prayer. All right, so I'm going to pause. 1 Peter is written in a time when Christians know that something is coming very soon. That is, like this Roman occupation, the adversity of what's happened out of the birth of the church since Jesus resurrected, it's not going well. The Christians are not appreciated. Christians are not just getting along, and the Roman government's like, yeah, you just do your Christian thing. It's all good. Romans were starting to hate Christians. Right? It was not pleasant. And so Peter is saying, and the end of all things is near, and of course this is talking about the end of the priesthood, the end of Jerusalem is coming very soon. Therefore be of sound judgment and sober spirit for the purpose of prayer. So be on your guard, start praying. Jennifer was just talking to me about how we cover things with prayer. Thinking about future things, we can lay down a blanket of prayer because of our love and compassion, concern, and thoughts for those ahead of us, coming, future decisions. Um, above all, in verse 8, says, above all, keep fervent in your love for one another, because love covers a multitude of sins. Be hospitable to one another without complaint. In a family, well, I can just say it in a family because all of us have families, right? In a family, it's easy for 2 or 3 or 4 siblings to grow up in a home, or 5 or 6 or 8 or 10. To grow up in a home, the dynamics change so much as you get bigger and bigger families. But you can have 2 siblings that are best friends one day, and the next day they want to kill each other. But they just hug and move on, and the next day, if anybody else out there tries to attack or threaten or make fun of or make little of my sibling, you're going to pay. You're not doing that, right? And parents have the same protection. Like, yeah, everybody's got kids, and you're all great, but mine are the ones that matter to me, right? I saw. You know how you see the bumper sticker? Yeah. And it's still not. Yes. There is something about that family connection that you can't replace. You see the bumper stickers about, my kid is an honor student at Summit High School or whatever. I saw one the other day about my son was the I don't know, something at the worst prisoner at this prison or something like that. Like the pride that comes out of situations. I'm like, it wasn't real. It was a joke. But being proud of your kids is just your lot in life. That you're proud of what they accomplish, even if it may not be what other kids accomplish. No. So I want to just mention this level of covering. I think this is what's neat about this piece that we talk about. Today's Mother's Day. Mothers cover their children in lots of ways. They cover them emotionally. They cover them when they get hurt. They cover them when they're trying to figure out things in life. Food, just the basic needs. Food, clothing, learn how to do hair and makeup and how to be appropriate and go places in public as they get older. The cheerleader, the driver, all the things that a mother does for their kids. It's a very specific role. But fathers have a covering also. And this is something Jennifer and I have talked about quite a bit, and that I feel like I'm still learning how this works. But Jennifer, in our family, Jennifer can provide a covering as a mother, but there's a covering that I provide also as a father. And there's a covering that I provide for Jennifer as a husband. And I guess it doesn't have to be exclusionary. It doesn't have to be one is more important than the other. It doesn't have to be, if we don't have this lined up perfectly, all in step, then we're not going to have success and blessings, because that's not true. We see people out there in all kinds of circumstances that are successful and have blessings, and they're the exceptions to the rule. But in general, God gives me the ability to provide a covering for my family. I give a covering to my wife as a husband. I give a covering to my children as their dad. And then there's other roles. Like even Jennifer's a teacher in a classroom. There's a teacher can give a covering over a classroom. And I'm not talking about something super spiritual or spooky. I'm just saying that I'm using Jennifer and I as an example because I know our situation. You all have this in your own life. But Jennifer has talents and abilities and gifts in her that when she goes into her classroom with 5-year-olds, 6-year-olds, she can do things for those kids that nobody else is going to do. And she has the desire to do that. And so there's a connection where she comes in this classroom and covers these kids in a way that they're not going to get at home. Teachers and parents have 2 different roles in the world, right? They get what they need from the parents at home, right? Ideally, yeah. Sometimes she's got a parent, but all of us, whenever we go out into the world, sometimes other jobs, like I think of coaching a team, you have a way to cover your giving of yourself and giving an environment for someone to grow on a team. In a business, if you're investing in a business, if you're buying and selling stuff, whatever the things are that you do, you have a way to cover the people. Like if you have a service industry, right, you have customers. You have a way to cover your customers, and they pay you for that because you have something of value to cover them. I'm reaching out there, but we have this levels of covering in our world that are very important. And when I think of love covers all offenses, and in 1 Peter, love covers a multitude of sins, there is, with the responsibility that we have, with the abilities and talents and gifts that we have, and any one person, there's a responsibility to cover and overlook those offenses. If we go back to having children, you all can look at my kids, and you can think, yep, she didn't, he didn't, he doesn't, he didn't, he definitely ain't, or whatever the things are, fill in the blank, you know. You can think that, but they're not your kids, right? I know the stuff that Abigail and Isaac and Emma and Ava have done. I know the things that they say that are nasty, and I know the things they've done that have been mean. I know the things that I've done. I know these things, but none of that stops me from loving them. And I can just as easily tell you all the wonderful things that they are, all the blessings that they are to people, the positivity they bring to the environment when they come in the room. I can talk about all those things, but I don't have to see the offenses. I'm not counting. Like, I don't have a marker at home and I'm like, Ava's got this many points in life. She's pretty well for 11. You know, Emma's got this many points in life, and I had to take off this many because, you know, she did all these things. She's 16, you know. and Isaac is, you know, he's got a long way to go. He's older. He should be closer by now. You know, I'm not keeping a record. I'm not keeping a record of what they've done or not done. I just love them, right? And so these offenses and sins and things that are imperfections, that's not what I see when I look at Isaac. Some of you may see those things, you know, because I see it in your kids, right? Like I see it. I see it. But that's not my responsibility. So this covering is what God gives to us. And so I just want to say, when you're thinking about the guy that goes out, you know, on Lake Superior, or I'm sorry, Lake Michigan, and he's in a boat, and he's at a place where his kids perished, and he writes a song, "It Is Well With My Soul." That's a pretty extreme circumstance of loss. But we have smaller circumstances of loss on a regular basis. We do lose a loved one that was really important to us. We do lose someone that is a hole in our lives. We do go through a financial crisis. Like, I just can't seem to win. The money didn't come through, whatever, or a car repair. I just had to put a second multi-$1,000 repair into my stupid car. It's not stupid. It's not a stupid car. She's got me. Yeah, nice. It's all good. I didn't want to drive it to Gary. So, I mean, we have things that happen, and, you know, if you have to put $2,000 into a vehicle, that can hinder some goals that you may have had or some stuff that you had planned, right? I have to recognize that God is that umbrella covering over all of us, right? And that's what Horatio Spafford was writing about when he wrote that song, "It Is Well." He's not thinking about how miserable he is from the loss that he just experienced. He's thinking about how good God is. And God is always going to look after me, and he's always going to see me. He's always going to bless me. He's always going to give me the things I need to be successful and to navigate life. Always. God is always going to do that. And then we think of Jesus, the things that Jesus did. Just when I think of Jesus, I think of him walking with his disciples and how he brought heaven to earth. Like, there's this God that's up there, and we've made mistakes as a people trying to sacrifice things and try to build idols and try to make religion about all this stuff that we've made over the years. And Jesus comes and he just loves me. He loves me, and he leads with authority and confidence. And he's not afraid of the government. He's not afraid of the kings. He's not afraid of the chariots and the knives, the swords. Not afraid of those things. Not afraid of the wind and the waves and the sea. And Jesus is sitting here right next to me, real person, real flesh. And like, this is the way that you design man to operate. This is the way it was meant to operate. So Jesus gives us a covering that we can't get from anybody else. And then Jesus empowers his church. Right? I didn't talk about covering inside the church, spiritual covering, but we have pastors, teachers, prophets, evangelists, apostles in the church that only those roles can do. Right? So as a pastor, I'm responsible to give a covering to you all, and it's me being a pastor here and pastor down the street at that church and the pastor up the street at that church and the pastor in another church, all have different ways of covering and different gifts and skills and abilities to provide. But that's a responsibility, right? And so you have some covering that you get to tap into from that. I'm thankful we have a network of apostles and other ministers that can help cover me, right? Like we need that. And what I'm getting at is that umbrella that starts with God and is over the whole universe. There's all kinds of coverings underneath that make our life pretty protected and a safe place to navigate, right? We just got to tap into it and rely on it and just know that source of rivers of living water coming out of my belly is that peace that passes like a river. We are covered. So, mothers, today, that's all I got. Thank you for being a covering to your children. We don't get where we are without our mothers, and so many different kinds and types and abilities. But I encourage you, when the next storm comes, I would frame it appropriately. There is another end to this day. All right, Abigail or Isaac and I wanted to go for a run yesterday in the morning, and we convinced Ava, because she didn't have really a place to go at the next moment. Jennifer and Emma were leaving, and we convinced Ava to get on her bike and ride with us, because we would be able to push her up the hills if she didn't want to. There's some big hills out where we live. We were going to push her up the hills, and it'd be fun. And she was a little, I don't know if I want to do that. We convinced her to go, and on the very first hill, she got going too fast, lost control, or she was using a bike that has pedals and pedal brakes, and I think she went from pedal brakes to trying to pedal and didn't work very well. So she has a lot of scars, scratches. She's missing some skin, and it was terrifying. I can use that word because hearing that scream when she was what probably 200 yards ahead of us, 100 meters. 100 meters. He knows this distance. Isaac can sprint 100 meters way faster than I can. That was pretty terrifying. She's okay. But I know Ava will get back on her bike again. I know she will, because she does have that protection, right? And she even though this was tough, I'm not going to say, hey, I didn't ask her to get back on right and 2 hours later when we got her all bandaged up. But she'll get on a bike again because she knows that she can, right? She knows she can, and it'll be fine. We learn some things. I think this is what I want to leave you with. We learned some things about pedal brakes, and maybe some handle brakes, because she has hand brakes too. We learned some things that next time, I'm not going to do it that way. Next time, I'm not going to put myself in this mess, right? Like, I'm thinking financial problems. I'm thinking health problems. I'm thinking all these things that sometimes are a crisis and a storm. Didn't have to be that way, but sometimes we kind of put ourselves in that boat. God still covers all that, even though we didn't do it all right, didn't do it all perfectly. Thank God He covers us. So be blessed today and be covered. That's it. I need to take a drink. Do we have anything today? Yes. Add to's, prayers. Yep.